21st, 2025, and I'm trying to screen recording on the PC because I wheel over to the computer and I'm asking the Copilot, hey, can you tell me about Add Aquachroma? Because I've been releasing some videos describing what it's all about. And so the computer thinks it looks like Aquachrome was a YouTube channel managed by Eric Madden. The channel covers topics like aqua, Bose-Einstein condensates, and other innovative concepts like the lightweight EM drive engine. From the recent uploads, it appears to focus on advanced scientific and technical presentations, probably related to cutting-edge physics and engineering. Have you watched any intriguing videos from this channel? And I go, so what do you think of the Inspire pattern of the Tetra MX2 intercepts? Because it looks like the Tetra MX2 intercept pattern hasn't been specifically covered in the publicly available information online. And so it goes on. So I send it a link. It looks at it. And so then I just start explaining because it says feel free to elaborate just a little. I was talking about how it, if you think of an MX2 in an inspirational type assembly like a Snellian array, semiconductors in 3D, then you get the fast Fourier transform effect of energy going over it in interference patterns that it might be able to absorb by sending it over to quantum dots. And when it sends it over to quantum dots, or at least the field is focused on those anchorage points and the nodes are computed, such that the revolution set of field mechanics ends up setting a velocity or a cooling effect. And so it's supposed to cool the environment because it's getting that energy and adding it to a density in one revolutionary point where the velocities start at a relative slow difference from one another around that node, that investment site, that capital. And so it's looking at it, and I go, I'm Eric from Aquachroma, so I'm wondering what we should publish on the website to help infill the missing overall picture from this perspective. And it's looking at it, saying, well, add some diagrams, maybe have some real world applications. Okay. Then it's talking about a fact section, address common questions and interactive simulations, expert commentary, glossary of terms, video content, provide more content like YouTube videos. So then I'm talking a little bit about an alternative to SIOSI chains. We start with that because it's easy to imagine those SIOSI chains having nodes that intersect. So it becomes like a surfboard or other winglet intercept or connect, where a chain could be, 30 links long on one side and 21 links long on the other, and that wave front of shape creates kind of like what we know from wings, and each of those radial bands is something that a fast Fourier transform, I think, can absorb from when energy is sent in some format approaching that kind of a shape. And so it's interesting to imagine a vessel made of tungsten, what is this? WSW, tungsten, sulfur, tungsten chains in this Snellian composition. So you can affect the range of densities that you would need in a hull design, where you have the high density area for shielding on, both sides of the vessel is needed. And then you have a range of structural trusses that help support the material membranes, like transfer agents for fluids and other essentials, the nutrient flow channels, the system that cleans the surfaces so that way the properties that are getting absorbed from the cosmos end up in the right area for utilization. So it becomes a vessel that's worth the investment in. Otherwise, of course, competitors would outsell you. You got to have a vessel that builds more of the vessel. You're not even competing unless you're at that kind of a league of, someone goes into the store, they think that they're going to get something that's worth, one, but when they leave, they're already out the door with something that's worth like 1.9. And then before they know it, it's grown into twice as much. I'm just saying. As I look through this, that there's these other, intercepts of tungsten, like tungsten trioxide or disulfide, that also should be involved for their compositions and strengths added. uh, when things get really fascinating is when the quantum dots get involved, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. So, those are made out of like cadmium selenide. Selenide? I'm not that familiar with selenide at all. Or zinc oxide or lead sulfide. Now, what's interesting about the quantum dots, though, that I knew of from before, is that they're from three different ranges of light waves. You've got those that are designed more for the visible spectrum, like the cadmium selenide that we're more familiar with LEDs that are designed to be a good material compositional upgrade in monitors for their brightness enhancement. That gets the light rays that well there's also I'm sorry, there's also zinc oxide for the UV bands, and there's also lead sulfide for the infrared ranges. All of those can help induce more energy into the vessel than what even solar panels that we've come to know and think highly of are able to absorb, because this is more than three times the range, and effectively in the right kind of overall design capable of restructuring in order to get that fast Fourier transform into more of an overall total where you have the potential of absorbing most all of it, or allowing the surface to be that redirect, what was it, the distributed energy front, a router interface. And so if you have a routing system that's designed to constantly update the world around it of the latest navigational updates, that's really the dream system, because that's the ultimate forefront of sharing information, because there's a constant update from that perspective that the rest of the universe, of course, would like to know of. And so by being able to broadcast just a simple tick, the effect of having an overall composition where all of those nodes are known about at some intercept point of signal strength. And so the system tunes into that wavefront to learn of the universe. And so it ends up being a very effective attachment site when you think of the Bose-Einstein condensates, because those condensates have this advanced feature where the surface is such that a condensate is phase locked. It's within range of a noticeable phase change from one side to the other, where if there is a vapor pressure, a vapor volatile event on one end, then it's guaranteed to have the mirrored effect on the other as well. And so that makes it a gravitational wave collection where you can imagine, oh, that's what explains a volumetric infill of semiconductor capability. If you have that amount of capacitance in space in a cold enough system, then you have the start of that assembly. And so when these kinds of devices are tuned by just simply putting it in a superconduction bath right from the get-go, right from the start, then they achieve even that much more capability. And I don't know, maybe they have the effect of weaving this stuff like spider silk in mass. I don't know if that's really what it's gonna be like, but it's kind of a funny or a fascinating insight because it's truly the what I consider different between a BEC and these ABECs, which is the aqua, or acá se llama la Bose-Einstein condensate, es que la sistema de radio a nuestros bandas de mandar información, la frecuencia de eso es imaginando una banda velocidad de la más grande que puede ser, como un C7 foundation of wave expectation. And that's what this system is really hunting for. And so by having that threshold of transport that's in essence infinitely fast, there's a volatility cost where the system changes the overall amount of buoyancy in space-time from one side of that ABEC fluid to the other side of that ABEC fluid is basically a release of banding of atmospheric coherence. Otherwise, it's almost fair to imagine that this system is absorbing a phase or a slight scalar percentage of the atmosphere around in energy redirection. So in effect, the amount that it redirects the molecules around it and creates an image in these, Bose-Einstein condensate phase locked solutions of almost zero velocity photonic linking energy fronts, where you get basically a beam to be woven into an actual frozen state. That's possible because these Mysi cubes are, in essence, uh, cross canceling and self balancing. So they can use the benefits of starting with a very cold effect or a cold range of molecular motions, and that makes light emissions at zero velocity all the easier when it's already slowed down to that effect. And so the expectations on where everything will move in space-time is something that the nodes compute with the help of the internet. And that's why the U-OR process is so important. Here, let's see if it knows of this. This is the reference anchor for 3D processes. I'm just going to say 3D processors need two type of reference anchors for aquachroma.com. Do you know what they are? And I'm hoping that it says a single reference anchor is one, and then the other is the YOR, which is a UOR, which is the information that is the latest navigational map or functional projection in a holographic array of space-time that is the agreement of the unison system. So basically, there's a mathematical computation such that if every node broadcasts for a certain emission of energy, that there's this waveform that describes how that space fills out the rest of the universe, and when that space of energy would end up making some other set more cost effective to emit because it's extra light energy. So it's like an addition to the calculi at those certain moments of time. And so it's like the broadcast of the ice radio, where it doesn't make an overall impact to the amount of thermal energy in the atmosphere. It's not, since it's a scalar, it hasn't been utilized yet. But when it's utilized, then yeah, it becomes an impact to the environment for those utilizations. And so it's a duality of what happens when you store energy from nature in a battery format. The question is, when do you consider it not nature? When it's just stored into a system that happened to slightly redirect it, and that's a question there, on how to answer it. So let's see what it says. I don't think it's gonna get it. It says micro anchors, thermal anchors. Well, I think it's still thinking about how to make it, because we're talking about, well, it's talking about CVD or spurting processes to place quantum dots precisely. So I think it's still thinking of the gilding process, more or less. Where I am actually thinking, oh, I thought you were going to say or talk about, and I'm just going to give it the acronyms: SRA and your from 3D processor. I guess I'll give the web page. aquachroma.com/3D processors, plural.php. Oh, I see. The two reference anchors you mentioned from Aquachroma's content involve SRA, spectral reflectance anchor, and your universal optical reference. I don't think either of those is actually right to what I wrote from the page. Let me go to the page. I'm almost certain. There's no way that that's what is. It just 3dprocessors.com. PHP. Your SRA, special relativistic anchor, is understanding. I see. Look at this. Look at this. Can you believe it? Thought it could get away with that. The deformation characteristics of an object out of context compared to the two environments, surface conditions, confidence and acclimation chewing. So what this should be thought of, though, is you have a CAD file on a computer system, and that CAD file could match up with what you have in real life, but you have the space-time anchor, which in effect is the the Reitman manifold applied conversion of what general relativity does. And so the your universal orientation reference information, that shared distributed tick, is what's going to fast pace that mapping to the SRA special relativistic anchor, such that it becomes very obvious how much that composition should deform to get to what is expected in a shared GPS, Latin longitude, where you have these things that would be kind of like well, the models would just know in essence, like, okay, well, it's this type of aluminum based off of what kind of node signature we're getting and what kind of harmony we're getting, spectral information and all of that guidance from the environment around. So based off of all of that, then uh, the tooling path could be, micro aligned using this kind of a subset. And so that could really help with how we have all of this machine code, which is fantastic for having the overall special relativistic model to what the room or cabinet should do. And with these devices in the cabinet being the link with Reitman manifold geometry to what the cabinet is actually trying to cut or add to, that That is such a rapid, fast-paced future of innovation forefront that we have to be able to share the geometries of the cabinets and the types of cutting implements and what kind of materials are around that they're willing to put inside of that cabinet, and to create a shared distributed website to where you get basically people the closest to you possible, for shipping reasons or just driving reasons. You might have that kind of temporal locality in a filter matrix of where to get something, and a person can say, well, I don't want to put my exact address online, so we'll use maybe like the Craigslist, somewhere plus or minus, and the user sets that range, and that could be a township or it could be a county or a state, and they can go from there for shipping further depending on what kind of component it is. But I think that that's where modern times is in a rapid deployment type strategy of what civilization could do. And that's what bugs me, that we aren't already working on this as fast as possible, because I would have thought that with my history, they'd at least be seeing what I'm doing, because it seems like someone's hacked my systems. All right, I'm gonna take that off the ending. Never mind. Never mind.